welcome to another edition of the Sports War. And we are back. We got the full crew in the house. That is what it's all about. The Yankees, out of any team in the league, are the best equipped to handle a blow like this.
I think there is a higher power at play here. He's due law of averages. That dude is the ultimate scrub. It's trash. Yeah. Every person you have in there is fucking trash.
Next game, you're going to see a big performance. You can see it in the end of the game, and I'm just totally excited for this.
And we are back. Welcome to another edition of the Sports Court here on a Thursday. And today we have the Barnes and Zach show. Michael lurking, Tony editing at a cafe near you. How you doing, Zach?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Pretty good. Exciting time in sports right now as free agency rolls on in baseball, and last night was the start of conference play for UConn, which we'll get to their win, over Xavier in overtime in a second. But was really excited for that, and then of course the start of Week 16 in the NFL season, the divisional game between the Chargers and the Broncos. So that should be a good one as well, and then. I know this is part of the comments too, but the talk about the Madden ratings and Woody Johnson and the nonsense that has always been the Jets organization. That's for sure. The first thing I wanted to talk about, was the UConn game. And it's interesting because of the way the season has been going for the Rangers, and I'm still watching the games, but it just, at this point, you feel like there's no hope. And actually, Corey was just texting me talking about, which I already knew, but just about on, I guess, The Fan this morning, they were talking about how the team is just all tight at the general manager, Chris Drury, and he's not going over stuff with them and this and that. But it just, I was telling Tony, yesterday in regards to that too, like it's, whenever you hear of that and then you hear, the coach say, oh, the players aren't giving 100%, and then they're talking about the general manager, it's like those people, the general manager and the coach, I mean, they're not surviving. They're definitely, not. And it's interesting. It just feels like it's a waste of time right now. And, they did have the trade of Capo Caco yesterday, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I just feel like it's like, why waste time? Like when stuff is this bad, it is this bad for a reason. And you're not going to find yourself out of it. But you kind of feel like that with the Rangers situation? It's like you're just wasting time now keeping these guys in place. How could they have a future with the team?
Yeah. I feel like, especially since how far they got last year, it's kind of depressing, to be honest, as a fan, I could imagine. But it just, and not that I've been watching a ton of Rangers games, but it just kind of feels like at this point you got to cut your losses and kind of try to rebuild here if that's the case. Yeah,
and the thing is, and Tony, has always liked Laviolette, and I understand it, the track record. He's been a coach for a while, but it's like, even, and then they're saying too something about like, well, the players are saying like the general manager's a problem, but it's like, I don't know. I just feel like still, if you love playing for your coach and he's doing his job, there's no way you're quitting on him. Absolutely not. Yeah. And coaches do not survive that. There's not one case of hearing about that and then they survive. It just doesn't happen. So that's why it's just annoying. It just feels like it's just a waste of time right now, and they have a tough schedule coming up, and it seems like they're going to get absolutely destroyed. Like it's starting tomorrow in Dallas. When you don't have guys, giving full effort, and especially in a physical sport like hockey. I mean, it's a disaster. So we'll talk about that. I definitely want to talk about UConn, but I guess we do have a few comments here. If you want to start with that.
Yes. Hold on. Kev Du says, "Let's go. We want the smoke, Brian."
Kev
Du. I can't play ball with you because your live rating isn't high enough. the fucking jets of the Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus.
Oh my God, yeah, that's so embarrassing. And it's funny he mentions the ball thing, and I think I was mentioning to you last week, how I'm starting to play again. So I actually have played the last 3 days. At LA Fitness, it's been a good time. And yesterday was actually my first time doing 5-on-5 in probably years, honestly. But so you definitely, there's an adjustment period. But it is so much fun. Like for a while, like for my cardio workout, I've just been doing the elliptical, and I was mentioning this yesterday too. It's like you find yourself like just staring at the clock, the miles. You're just thinking about how excited you are to get off, to get into the sauna. But with basketball, the time just goes. You look at the clock, and next thing you know, 2 hours have gone by. So it is really great because especially, it was different when we were younger. There's all these rec leagues we could do any sport we want. Now, I mean, we're pretty much resigned to golf, basketball, and softball. And basketball is just the most accessible, especially, you just have it with your gym membership because then you could play anytime. And it's just like the perfect thing in the winter because it's like you can't really do anything outside. And I'm not like a skier or a snowboarder. So, it just been great, getting back on the court, and basketball is just something, you feel like no matter how much time you've taken off, you just kind of like jump right back into it.
Yeah, definitely. I've friends who I play pickup with at the gym sometimes too. It is nice in the winter because football's really my thing, like pickup football, but obviously nobody's going to want to do that right now because it's freezing, but yeah, it is nice, and it keeps you engaged, like you said, instead of just like doing the elliptical. It's like kind of boring,
Oh yeah, it's so much better, and just we're all competitive. So it's just you just strive to get better, to win, and it's just a great game, and it's funny that you mention the pickup football because we've always liked that. Me and Matt, go back a long ways doing that, and it was funny actually. So this is probably like I want to say maybe 10 years ago at this point, or probably actually longer, maybe even 11. But I used to live at this apartment place in Sonia, and it used to be a school. So there was a like a small gymnasium. So in the winter, all the time we would play like 2-on-2 touch in there. But it was like, since it used to be a school, it's like not insulated properly. So we try to be like real quiet, but like the people would be living right behind the thing, and they'd flip out, come yell at us. But we used to have so much fun with that, honestly. There really is nothing like throwing the ball around, even really just having to catch. And the thing for me is I always would luck out too, because like I'd always be kind of like tough, just with like matchups, running up and down the field. So I always try to be just like auto quarterback because like covering people and stuff, it's tough.
Yeah, no, I hate covering people. I was more wide receiver. That was like my thing.
Yeah. And then also too, it'd been a couple of years, but like me, Matt, Tony and Mike played like a couple like 2-on-2 games at like the beach, but running in the sand too. Talk about tough. A workout. Yeah. But again, it's just so much fun. So stuff like that. When you incorporate sports into it rather than just some like straightforward, cardio workout, it definitely makes it a lot more fun. That's for sure. What else we got here?
We got Josh B saying, "Yo, what up, fam? Let's have a day." Matthew Gabriel coming in with a few comments here. Saying, come on. Kev Do, Woody Johnson, Josh Boy. At least we have UConn, fellas. Michael Buckta coming in saying UConn. Said Hurley was losing his head last night. He said, imagine him and I on the sidelines together during a game. Says, shout out to Josh B and Kev Do. Says Caravan, Solo, Terrace, and says all 20-plus points.
Yeah, no, quite the game, Michael. It was so exciting watching. And I've mentioned this over the past week, too, just like, because I was at the game on Saturday against Gonzaga, and the atmosphere at MSG was just unbelievable. All the UConn fans, the chants, the closest to that game. Yeah. And I feel like, sometimes we think, especially when it's not like our number one sport or the NFL, which it seems like everybody loves, watching week to week, you kind of feel like, you just wait till the end of the season, this and that, that's what matters. To an extent, I mean, obviously the end result, of course, is that's what matters. But it really just being there, like, just gave me, just like an appreciation for the passion, the tradition, which I knew, but, you kind of forget about it for a second. So it's like, it is like when it's your team, regular season college basketball, it is a lot of fun, especially conference games or big matchups. Just the energy. And it's just amazing. The difference in regular season college basketball versus regular season NBA. I mean, it's just not even close.
Yeah, especially for a team like UConn. It's like, I don't know. I have a few friends who go to UConn, so they go to all these games, and it's really cool for them because it does feel like every game means something, especially the game last night. That's a Big East matchup. That means a lot. But yeah, like compared to the NBA, it's not even close because every game means something. So the NBA, it's like they try with the cup and all that, but it's not the same.
No, it's honestly just a complete laughing stock. The NBA, that's for sure. I still have not watched a game from start to finish this year. Have you?
Yeah, I pop in with the Knicks, and I was watching the Cup, and I when there's nothing on, I'll watch because it's just like sometimes I just need a sport to watch, but like it's not the same as watching football or baseball. Like I watch it passively. It's not like the greatest thing ever to me, but I'll still watch.
Yeah. Oh, it just used to be so much better. I think that's the tough part for me, and especially too that it's like. It all comes down to the players. They made it this way, and they could find themselves out of it, but they're just like they're not, and they just care about their money. Which I understand, everything's money, but you still, especially the fact that you're making that much money, the fact that you can't have any type of pride in yourself. I don't know. I just think that's just an embarrassment to not even just basketball, but sports in general. So it is disappointing to see that. But right now. The UConn Huskies are rolling, and if you think about, they end up winning against Xavier in overtime last night, 94-89, actually trailed by one after the first half. But they've been on quite the run. They lose, those 3 straight games in Maui. And ever since then, just a switch has clicked. And Tony was doing the camera work. I think they played like Loyola, Maryland, something like that. They blow them out. But then they had 3 tough games in a row, Baylor, Texas, Gonzaga. And then now the start of conference play, which, you understand going into this game. And I was telling Tony yesterday when I saw the number on this, it was like 14.5. I was like, listen, I feel like they're going to win, but, it's a conference game. And it's not like Xavier is a team, that's going to be like under 500 or something. They're competitive. So that's why I thought that number was inflated. But just the fact, too, that they've been able to rebound from that disaster and beaten teams that are all far better than the teams that they played in Maui. So it just seems like for whatever reason, that was just a bad fit out there, bad vibes. But now they're back home. These strong home crowds, which actually, last night, that was their 27th straight home win. So it shows how well they've been doing there. And, of course, now back to, 11th in the country. And when you look at this game, looking at the first half, a couple of things that have really stood out to me throughout, the entire season for UConn so far, where the reason why, because we're used to the last couple of years, I mean, they're up 20 at half. They're winning every game by double digits. They're covering all the time. I mean, just crazy statistics, is just not having, guys like Donovan Clingan and Adamo Sanogo down low, swatting shots left and right. Or Cam Spencer, just so efficient from 3-point range last year en route to the championship. So guys are in different roles. So it just feels like if they could try to continue to improve, defensively inside. And as the game progressed, they did that. They actually ended up with 10 blocks. Carabin had 3, Reed had 4, Diarra with 1, and Ross with 2. But I think that's key is just, defending, down low, because that's always been their calling card. Going back to when Jim Calhoun was there, I think there was a stretch where they led the nation in block shots for like at least 5 years, maybe even close to 10. So that's, the defense has been a calling card. And then also, I think just smarter shot selection. And as the, game went on, second half, they were getting, more efficient with their 3-pointers. But at one point, I think they were at 20% or less than that. And I feel like just like in the NBA, same thing. I mean, that's what, destroys team when you're just set on it has to be a three-pointer. You're missing a lot of them when, you could have these easy buckets that adds up, of course, to a lot more points. But down the stretch, they really, really came alive from three-point range and also just were making big shots, between Solo Ball and Alex Caravan and McNeely as well. And he was in some foul trouble, so he actually only played 21 minutes. But Alex Caravan actually played 43. Had 20 points, 5 rebounds, and also hit 3 3-pointers, 3 of 8. Solo Ball was also 3 of 8 from three-point range, 22 points, 6 of 17 from the floor. And Diarra actually had a double-double, 12 points, 11 assists. So, everybody played a role last night, and I see guys, like McNeely, like Caravan, like Solo Ball, and definitely last night, Terrace Reed Jr., 20 points, 13 boards, and 4 blocks. What a performance by him. But it seems like all those guys, have potential, and I think, as the season progresses, they're going to grow, they're going to get better. And then we're going to start to see, signs of this team becoming, more like the teams from the past 2 years. So it's good to know, the talent's there. And they have a coach in Dan Hurley who would do anything for his team. And he's just so into it at all times. And you feel like he really gets the best, out of all of his players. But I think there was like a couple minutes left in the, second half. And, Xavier, who was lights out from three-point range, if you look at this, they were actually 13 of 24, which is insane. And Dante Maddox Jr. had 22 points, 5 of 9 from three-point range off the bench. But they were just draining big threes. There was a situation where they were up 5, and then right away, UConn, gets a 2 with Caravan. And then I believe it was Ball who hit the three-pointer after that. And then all of a sudden, tie game. A little back and forth, couple questionable calls down the stretch too, with like I guess it would just personal foul calls where it's like, the offensive player on Xavier's, running around them just like a little arm, and they're called it. But they did call it both ways. And on the last play of the game, I think it was it was Ball, to try to win it at the buzzer. And there was like a screen where I think McNeely got hit. They didn't call it. So, of course, as you can imagine, Hurley going nuts. But then the overtime period, they really locked down and, played some good defense down the stretch. Also, what was key in this game for UConn, 20 of 21 from the free throw line. So a lot of times, you talk about it in the NBA a lot too. It's just games are, won and lost at the free throw line. So anytime, you're knocking down your free throws like that, and just, playing a tough defense down the stretch, that's the key to victory. And Xavier did a good job at the line too, 18 to 21. So, just look at the 3-point range though for UConn, 8 to 24. Like I said, a lot of misses there in the first half. So I think if they could just kind of dial back those, obviously if they're open, definitely take them, but no need to force. I think they're going to continue to, improve as the season goes on. And I really see, no reason by the time it's all said and done for the regular season that they don't end up, winning, the Big East championship. You obviously have some good teams, and there's a lot of hype, even though they just got a big injury in St. John's. But, we know they're strong, and Marquette, I believe, started out 9-0 before dropping 2 in a row. They just won actually last night over Butler. But, they're number 9. They're actually the only other ranked team in the conference. And Georgetown, which has been in the doldrums, didn't work out the tail end of John Thompson III and then Patrick Ewing. But in Ed Cooley's second year, they find themselves 9-2. So maybe they're a force. St. John's with Bettino, they're 9-2. You got Villanova's 8-4. They've kind of struggled since going from Jay Wright to Kyle Neptune, so this is a big year for them. Even DePaul, which is always at the bottom of this conference, is 8-3, but they did just drop their 2 first, conference games. So it's going to be a fun season in the Big East, and it's great to see too where this conference has come, because I think, back in, I think it was 2012 when, they kicked out all of the, the football schools and kind of, rebranded the conference, made them part of the American, and then just kept the Big East names for the Catholic non-football schools, but then added some universities. I just think they've done a really good job, and it seems like most years, everybody's competitive, but, top to finish, there's really not too many like bottom feeders. It's a lot of good quality basketball. And I really look forward to seeing it this year. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's awesome because, like you said, like there was a period of time where the Big East was pretty much dead in terms of basketball. So I think to bring it back to what it was is awesome. I think that's where UConn belongs, especially, and it makes for the most competitive matchups for them. So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to going to the Big East tournament. Not that I've set it up yet, but I think I definitely want to go this year. I was there a couple of years ago, so I guess it was their first national championship year. For the semifinal, and that was great. Seeing that, just the atmosphere. Have you been to a Big East tournament at all, or?
I have not. It's the one at the Garden, correct? Yeah. No, I have not. My friends go like every year. I'm trying to go with them this year actually because it's awesome. The atmosphere is great. Anything at the Garden is great, but especially that.
Yeah. The key is though, if you're going to the semifinal, like kind of a hilarious story. I definitely told it on here like a while ago. So yeah, like I said, it was 2 years ago. I guess going on 3. But it's a doubleheader game. And I think, it was, earlier start because you have the first game. I want to say that maybe the first game was at 5 and then the game after that. And, so we went to Stout before, like drinking and stuff. And just for whatever reason, like we just didn't, which is surprising, but we didn't think about like, oh, okay, like what we're doing for dinner because you can't go out and then come back in. Yeah. So I watched the first UConn game. Great. Providence is playing. And then it's like, I just couldn't, I guess I just didn't want, the food that they had in the garden. Yeah. So after halftime of the second game, literally just dipped and went to Carmine's by myself. Like we're just starving, like couldn't help it. But yeah, it's just a long time. You gotta be fueled up for that.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, that was just kind of a hilarious thing. But I believe we had a couple more comments here. We're starting with Josh B, right?
Yes. Let me check those out. Yes. Josh B says Matty G says Bukta. Bukta says I was yelling the whole game. Says I'm considering going to UConn Creighton at Gamble. And then Donna Lee Fender says, good morning, Josh Bergs.
And welcome, Donna. She's part of the TCA, and nice to have her here with us. So welcome aboard. Yeah, speaking of Gamble, I think I've been to like one game there ever. Like the couple UConn games I've been to over the past couple of years, not at the Garden. We're at the XL Center, so I would love to go there. Obviously, it's somewhat of a hike to get there, especially like during the weekend stuff. But the atmosphere is great, so I definitely would like to do that. And then I am excited. I'm gonna go to UConn St. John's. It's like the 23rd. So I feel like the atmosphere will be nuts for that, especially if St. John's continues to have the season that everyone's expecting them to. Yeah. It's gonna be weird too. I guess because when I was there, like for Gonzaga, obviously Gonzaga, they're West Coast, but it was literally 99% UConn fans. So I just wonder with St. John's if it's gonna be split. Because it's just kind of weird because UConn does take over that building.
Yeah, this is at the Garden.
At the Garden, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be split.
Yeah.
Because especially if they continue to have the season they're having, then yeah, it'll definitely be split. But I thought it was really cool that UConn kind of took over for the Gonzaga game. I thought that was awesome. It was like another home game. But yeah,
unreal, and I was riled too on the way out. I let a couple like UConn Huskies, so I was riled to do that. But yeah, that's what really makes it great. Honestly, it is the passion of the fans, the passion of the players. So it's nice to have this because right now, let's be honest. With the way, not that I really care about the Jets, but just having like a team to root for. Usually it's like last couple of years, the Rangers, but with the Rangers playing like the Rangers, nice to have a team that you feel like, okay, this team, has potential. This team could go somewhere. So it's exciting stuff. And UConn will get back on the hardwood on Saturday at Butler. So that one will be in Indiana. But, I am excited for the direction of the team, and I think they're going to continue to thrive under Dan Hurley, and excited to watch the rest of the season. That's for sure. But if we could go now to the world of Major League Baseball.
It's deep to left. It's 700. Albert Pujols.
Yeah, what a play! Stop it, Tony. Yep.
And Alonso cracks one of the Mets win the ball game. Out of sight.
And it works at 100 miles an hour. 14 strikeout.
Drove deep to left field. There it goes. See ya.
All right. So just a couple things in Major League Baseball, I wanted to, just kind of get your thoughts on. First, I don't think I've seen you since the, the Devin Williams deal, and then, the Clay Bellinger trade. So those two trades for the Yankees. What did you think about those deals? Did you think that they make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think Bellinger especially makes sense for them. I think you got to find someone else at first, and I mean, it makes me happy because now I know they're not going after Alonso. But I think it's a great move for them. And I was just talking to Mike about it. Like, I think the Yankees are going to be just fine. I think that, obviously it's a tough loss with Soto, but they're going to pick up the pieces and they're able to get more guys now. So, I think Bellinger is a great step in that process for sure.
And then Devin Williams too. I mean, I feel like you give up Nestor, who really you wanted to get rid of. Not to say that he's like a terrible pitcher, but it just seemed like okay, like we have enough pitching, and he's been inconsistent the last couple of years. Let's get something for him rather than get nothing. And then you trade a guy like Caleb Durbin, who you got in a trade with Atlanta, whose stock is high, so you're taking advantage of that as well. And then you're getting a guy like Devin Williams, whose ERA for his career is under 2. Definitely considered one of the best closers in the game. And I know, a lot of people focus on the Pete Alonso home run, but if you take that away, the track record is pretty good there.
Yeah, he's a good pitcher. That's a good pickup for you guys. I know everybody's talking about that, but I still think he's a good pitcher and definitely a good move for them.
Yeah. And then it gives you the flexibility, to have Luke Weaver be a multi-inning setup guy, and they also, re-signed Loaizaga. So if he's healthy, that's a pretty strong, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 7, 8, 9, however you want to stagger it. So, I love those moves. And even with Bellinger too, I guess, so at first they were actually saying, there was a report, we're actually going to have him just play the outfield, but then Boone said yesterday, it just depends how the rest of free agency goes. So I think they actually are, still pursuing other first basemen, but kind of like what you said with Alonso, I really question that actually would happen. And I don't want it to happen just because I feel like, we need more, higher batting average and also better defense. And then to couple that with how much more you'd have to pay him than some of the other options out there, notably like Christian Walker, for instance. Give me Christian Walker all day. The contract, instead of being maybe $300 million or high $200 millions, it's $60 million, and you just don't have that risk because, and I'm sure you see it yourself, and I'm sure you're banking on the fact that if he does come back to the Mets, that he'll rebound. But it's just been with the batting average, and I know he ended up hitting 240 last year, but that part for me is just a little concerning. The stretches where he just goes missing. I mean, we know he has tremendous power, but it just seems like, especially two high velocity fastballs, it seems like he's struggled with the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. I think for Pete, it's very tough because last year was a contract year for him, so he was playing with a lot of pressure, and I feel like he's the type of player where he's usually playing relaxed, and that helps him. So I feel like last year he just wasn't himself at all. And definitely like those stretches where he would just kind of go quiet for a long time. It felt like, especially when we went on those big runs, he wasn't really a key part of that. It was other guys. It was Lindor. It was Iglesias. It was guys like that who really picked up the slack. So I think that going forward, obviously I want him back because I think if we could get him back for a manageable amount of money and he's playing without that pressure on him, I think that he could get back to, his old ways. But it's tough because it kind of drove his value down. And, like, for what he's asking for, we're not going to be able to pay him that. We're just not. So.
Now, what are you hearing that he's asking for?
Well, I know it was high last season, like it was absurd, like compared to like what we could realistically give him now. But I think what I've heard is that we're really aiming for like a 4 or 5 year deal for like 125 to 150 million. Like that's going to be what we can offer him. But I don't know if we'll offer higher because of the fact that we already have a good relationship with him, obviously, but I really don't know. I think it's going to be a shorter term deal. We're not going to sign him for one of those like long, like 10-year deals. It's just not going to happen, especially with the way that he played last year. Obviously, the playoffs, he played great, and that was honestly, I think, the only reason that these talks are still happening. I think if he kind of did nothing in the playoffs too, I don't think there would be any like push to have him back. Especially with getting Soto now and everything. But I want him back. He's one of my favorite players, so I'm a little biased. But, yeah.
Well, and it's interesting, too. And, again, like, nobody told me this, but especially having, Scott Boras, as his agent.
Yeah.
I, went into, especially before last season, I was thinking, I mean, he wanted something, like, close to what Aaron Judge got a couple years ago, like that type of contract. Yeah. So, and it seems like, okay, after this season – those expectations, would still be, tempered. But do you think, like, in his mind, like, right this very moment, like, he's still looking for that $300 million? Or do you think because, like, kind of, reality of the marketplace that he's kind of tempered those expectations now?
I think he's definitely taken his expectations down. Just because, like, especially from what I've heard, like, the market isn't, like, too crazy for him in terms of other teams. Honestly, I think his best bet is to come back with us because, like I said, we already have that existing relationship and we want him back. So it's like we're going to easily offer him a little more than other teams would just to have him back and have him on this roster. So, yeah, but definitely like he's not going to get the same amount of money.
And I just feel like to the way that, I think the whole Soto thing for David Stearns was like a one-off, but the way he operates, like, I don't see him even close to like, 300 million or whatever. No. It's probably 125, 150. But I almost question too with Stearns, and obviously Cohen has some influence there, but just the way Stearns, looks at data and stuff. Like, I almost question, if he wants him back at all, because like Tony was even mentioning, because obviously he follows this stuff closer than I do. But that it didn't seem like there was any. And again, it might just be playing the game, but he didn't even make it seem like necessarily one way or the other that he was saying that they wanted them back or not. David Stearns, that is.
Yeah, and I think like I think they're probably so high on Soto right now that it's like they can't even think straight. But like they had asked him around that time, like when we signed Soto, I think it was at the press conference actually. They were like, "Would you like to push to have Alonso back?" And they're like, "Yeah, we'd love to have him back, but we're kind of dealing with other things right now. We're gonna see if we can get it done." Like, but that level of enthusiasm was not there to like push to get him back. And I think that's why people are starting to get nervous because our priorities are elsewhere right now, especially with Soto. And I think they're gonna try to get Manaea back as well. But it's definitely, you can feel it with the fans. Like every time I'm on social media, every time there's a Mets post or something, like the tension just keeps growing. Like, where's Alonso? Re-sign Alonso. And it's like, they're not really, there's no sense of urgency to get him back. It feels like, at least to me, like, and the fans really want him back, obviously, but I don't think it's the same with Stearns and Cohen.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And it's interesting too. Like, I get the sentiment from like, Mets fans that they are like, oh my God, like I don't want him to go to the Yankees. And it's just funny because it's like, I feel like, most of us Yankee fans, like we don't want him. Like, you know what I mean? But I will say it seems like, and again, I don't know, if that's, Boris, blowing smoke or not, but it seems like there is some level of interest there. And I just wonder too, throughout this process, obviously, Alonso being on the Mets, his entire career, if it's like he almost wants to like stick it to them because he's feeling like they are disrespecting him. And I almost wonder, and again, like I hope they don't do this, but I almost wonder if he's gonna like entertain or offer to the Yankees like doing something where it's like a 3-year, $100 million deal with an opt-out after the first year. I could see that happening, especially if he's not getting any big offers. So I think that would be the biggest threat, or a team like San Francisco, maybe Boston or Toronto that is struggling to bring in any type of big talent free agent, that they would kind of offer him more and just say, fuck it, let's just get him on our team. And that offer for many of those teams will be so much higher than what he's getting right now.
Yeah, and I think like what you said, like regardless of where he goes, it's never going to be the long-term deal that was originally planned out. It's going to be more of these like short-term deals, see how it works given our roster, and that's what they're going to go off of. But I really hope that's not the case. I really hope we can get him back, because I really want to see him with this current roster. I think it would be great, but that element of maybe him feeling a little bit betrayed by the organization just because their priorities are elsewhere, like I said, like it's very real. I mean, that could definitely be a very real possibility that he's entertaining, offers from the Yankees and other teams because we kind of have put our priorities elsewhere. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But like I said, like it's definitely, I think the panic is setting in for Mets fans a little bit, because it's really been radio silent. Like all you're hearing is like, rumors and things like that. Like SMY kind of pushes out something new every day, I feel like, but there's nothing concrete happening. I think they're still just kind of entertaining offers right now. So. Yeah.
And I kind of expect it to come to a head like a lot sooner than, in previous years, just because I think Scott Boras definitely has some PTSD for the way, last offseason went, and you have, Jordan Montgomery firing him, calling him out, and then he rebounded with Snell, but he took that deal early in the offseason, which is something that he definitely wouldn't have done in previous years. And maybe part of that too was that Snell, simply wanted to go to the Dodgers.
Yeah.
But I do think, we'll hear something about this soon. So it's definitely going to be interesting. Speaking of the Mets as well, what did you make of the $4.25 million or $4.25 million deal with former Angels pitcher Griffin Canning? They announced that one last night.
I don't know. I think it's all right. I mean, I don't know much about the guy. Like I was looking at his stats and his record. I mean, it's kind of hard to judge someone off their record being on the Angels. So he has I think he had a 4.8 ERA, something
4.78,
like 4.78,
and led the American League in home runs allowed. I think through like 171 innings, I think he gave up 31 home runs, something like that.
Okay, so I mean, once again,
and in earned runs, 99.
Okay.
Oh, 519. Actually, okay. So it was the 478 was the career, but it was 519, 6-13 last year.
Okay. I mean, it's just kind of like these other pitchers that we're getting, these like, low name pitchers. It's like, I guess we'll see how it works out. I don't really know how it's going to work out, but I think it's more just for the sake of depth in the rotation. And I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't know much about the guy, so we'll kind of see what happens. But I don't really know how to feel about it, to be honest, because it's nothing like crazy substantial. I mean, I've said it before too. Like I'm really focused on Mania, so like all the other pitching deals, like these low pitching deals, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like I'm just focused on getting him back. So
and it is interesting. I mean, given the way that Mania pitched last year, you would think that they would really want to get him back. But then I question if they actually are going to get him back, just because you have Montas, they're banking on Holmes being a starter, but then you also have Senga, Peterson, Blackburn, McGill, and Buteau. Obviously, like Blackburn, McGill, and Buteau, all those guys could pitch out of the bullpen.
Yeah.
But then you think about what they did last year, relying heavily on Manaea, Quintana, and Severino. I just question if that's really just like Stearns' strategy, that he's just all going on rehabilitation. We rehabbed all of these guys last year, and we're going to do it again. And I just think one of those things, like, especially, given that the Mets, are obviously have their championship aspirations, I don't know how you could be confident going into a season like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That really, I get it. You want to rehab guys, and it's probably easier to do that than to go out and kind of make another splash deal. But it's like you kind of have made your bed with this. Like, I don't really know like how they could not re-sign Manaea, or at least go get another star pitcher, because I heard they were throwing around like Walker Buehler too. So
and I mentioned that to Tony yesterday. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, I mean, I'm not going to complain about that if we can get him. I mean, that would be great. But either way, I think we need one more big pitcher to either re-sign or go out and sign somebody, because it's just not enough right now. Because, like, I get it. You're going off of thinking that everyone will be healthy, but if you look at what happened with us with the whole Senga thing, it's just like nothing is guaranteed. So the more depth that you have in terms of having like a star rotation, like you're seeing it with the Yankees, like their rotation is insane now. So it's like the more depth that you can have in terms of having star pitchers, the better off you're going to be, because you never know who's going to go down. And obviously, like, you can get those depth pieces like they're doing, but it's better to have people on the front end that are, big name star pitchers, because at least you can guarantee that they're going to be there.
Yeah. No, and I think too, it kind of reminds me of, and maybe unfortunately it'll take, the first half of this season for the Mets to realize this, but it kind of reminds me of what the Yankees kind of morphed into the last couple of years of, we'll rehab every reliever we have. And then, you get to the postseason, the bullpen shot, you don't have a guy who's just so dominant that hitters fear facing, and that leaves you in a situation. And then ultimately that led to the Yankees, acquiring Devin Williams, because leading up to that, before, Clay Holmes, when he was good, before that all started, you had always had that tradition of strong and a lot of times high-priced closers. Of course, Mariano for so many years, and David Robertson after him, and Chapman at the beginning of his tenure, but we know how that ended up working out. But they've always put an emphasis on that, and I think it's just one of those things, like an offensive line in football. You can't short yourself, with the bullpen or starting pitching, because it's going to come back to bite, at some point. And before we move along here, a couple comments. I think Josh B saying, good morning, Donna. And then Matthew giving you a shout out here.
What's going on, Matt? Saying Zachariah says, ¿Cómo está, muchacho? Ernesto Cabrera says, did Tony shave?
That's a good one, honestly. That is a good one, right?
Says the Mets season success hinges on beating us in the Subway Series mid-year.
Oh man, and that goes with the theme. We were talking about this, last time you were here, and I just had an example of it yesterday. We just had, we did a short yesterday on when I was talking about the Yankees like acquiring Bellinger, and the person didn't say that they were a Mets fan, and in the clip I just said something like, of course, we wanted Kyle Tucker. But this might work out pretty well with Bellinger, and then I just get like attacked in the comment about how like, oh, like the Yankee fans are so delusional. The Yankees have no idea what they're doing. There's no way Bellinger, and it's just like they got like that stuff. Just I don't know. I just feel like it has to stop, because like it's not even just about me being annoyed. I mean, you at times, must feel embarrassed when you hear some of this stuff about like, oh, but versus the Yankees. Like it must be so annoying at times, right? Or no?
Well, I feel like it goes both ways. I just feel like the arguments and it's like I said this last week to you guys, it's only going to be worse now because of Soto. It's only going to drive it, further. And obviously, I love rivalries, and that's great, but it's just like you're not focused on your own team. It's like you're so hyper fixated on like what the Yankees are doing, and then on the other side, it's like, oh, what are the Mets doing? It's like just focus on what you're doing and focus on building a team that you're proud of and go from that. Like I don't know, I think that whole thing is stupid. And you can tell who's clearly like on which side. Like they won't say, but it's like, it's pretty easy to tell.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like talk about putting like the cart in front of the horse. Like, I mean, you sign a free agent and then all of a sudden you just like, it just feels like these people think they're like entitled, that they're just so high up on the hierarchy. It's like, you might want to like, wait a second, because, games aren't won on paper. Anything can happen once the season starts. So to me, yeah, it just seems so ridiculous. And yeah, one other thing I just wanted to mention too, with the Bellinger signing and then, the Yankees walking it back saying he could play first or the outfield. I think it was Cashman was saying, if the Yankees don't end up adding anybody else, that they might go with Cabrera, who basically, he's filled in at left, he's played first, but has been kind of a utility guy the last couple of years. And then Oswald Peraza, who actually a few years ago was the favorite to start at shortstop over Anthony Volpe before he had an impressive spring training. But he was saying that those guys would be in the mix for a starting position, which made me think, too, no mention of LeMahieu. It seems like they're just dragging their feet on releasing him, but that would be, a mere formality. But I look at it as and it doesn't need to be anything crazy, but I still would like to add somebody for, I guess, basically first base, because I feel like the outfielders out there, Santander, Hernandez, I feel like their defense isn't good, so that's why it's like, give big money there. I mean, I guess Santander can play first base, but then, what's the defense going to look like there? I definitely want to be strong defensively. That's another thing that you can't hide on the baseball field. But with the options out there, and let's assume they're going to put Bellinger in the outfield, like, what do you think makes the most sense? I mean, they've thrown out Arenado, and I know they're not on his trade list. And again, I don't like that. They've mentioned Paul Goldschmidt, which again, I feel like he's too old. I guess it would be minimum money, but then it's like, I hate the risk of like he's just a complete disaster from day one, and then doesn't produce, and then like you're scrambling. And then Walker and Santana. Like, of all those guys, I mean, what do you think makes sense for the Yankees to do in terms of like filling that first base position, given that they'll have Bellinger in the outfield?
I think Walker is probably your best option, just given the fact that he's still young, and like you said, you could probably get him for much cheaper than getting a guy like Alonso or somebody who's asking way higher. I think Arenado and Goldschmidt are great, but they're kind of like on the tail end of their careers. So it's like, if you're building for the future and you're building for like a longer window, you kind of need to think about that too. Because I was talking to my friends about it yesterday, and like, there's been a lot of talk about Goldschmidt and Arenado. I just feel like we were all kind of in agreement that they're just kind of they're older. So it's like, what's the point of getting someone like that? I mean, you could, hope that they're gonna, play great baseball until the end. But it's like, I'd rather, if I was going out and signing someone big at first, I would go get somebody that you're going to have for a long time. So, yeah.
Yeah. And even Walker, because actually, believe it or not, it seems like he, hasn't been in the league that long, but he's actually 34. But, you got Goldschmidt being 37 years old, and I think Arenado's turning 35. The reason why I like him is that I know it's a short-term deal. He was highly productive before the hamstring injury last year, and the fact that he's good defensively, because after that whole scenario, Rizzo at first, he killed us in the playoffs with the defense. I want to be solid there. So I just feel like I love that. And I was suggesting too, maybe just going with a shorter term deal at higher years. 2 years doesn't really seem, like there's risk there. And I think, that makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting because, like, Ernie mentions, Santerre or Carlos Santana if we don't get Alonso. And with Santander, I could definitely see, him having a big season offensively, but I just don't like the thought of defense. We don't have the designated hitter, spot in the lineup open with Stanton. So that's just the only concern there. But I definitely like the bat, but I also think, again, he's like the high strikeout type of guy, which Walker and, Carlos Santana aren't. But then again, like Carlos Santana being 38, that just gives me some trepidation. And supposedly he's still a good fielder, but I just question, how athletic are you really at that point in your career. And I just think first base is such an important position because everything comes back to first base. Obviously, the throws, you need guys to dig balls out of the dirt. And you definitely want somebody who could go up and get one because that will make the difference in the game. You got these left-handed hitters who are hitting rips down the line. You need somebody who can get up and catch those.
Yeah, for sure.
So it'll be interesting. But I think, too, the Yankees are being coy here and kind of letting the market come to them on the first base position. And also, too, I was going to add, agreeing with you on Walker, I like it, too, because I just feel like for Goldschmidt or even Santana, if we felt like, okay, we're kind of solid with, like, our power, then I would be okay because even if they do bad, whatever, we can recover from that. But I feel like we would like – and again, especially being scarred with the lack of production, I think they were saying 27th in OPS in the major leagues last year at first base, and most of that was Rizzo.
Yeah.
But we need this guy to be like a decent part of the lineup, middle of the order. And I know he's interested, so I just hope we get to the finish line there. And then I think other than that, we're probably all set. For next season, which is exciting. And it's funny, it feels like it's so far away, but I think the time from now till we get to pitchers and catchers, especially with the holidays coming up, will fly by.
I really hope so because you talked about it like not really having much to be excited for in terms of sports teams. I really don't right now, so really, really looking forward to the Mets. That's really like the bright spot of sports right now for me. So yeah, I really do hope it flies by and we're at spring training. And then I hope that flies by too. But yeah, definitely for us some more moves to make in the time left. But I'm confident that we'll do what we need to do. I just hope that they re-sign Pete. That's really my main thing, and then everything else is. And Minai as well, but Pete is like main priority right now for sure.
And I was gonna ask you this before. I'm glad you mentioned that again. Do you have like let's say one of those teams I mentioned, the Red Sox, the Giants, or the Blue Jays, offer him some kind of bigger deal maybe than what you're expecting? Do you have like kind of like a walkaway number there, or do you feel like because you want to see him with this team, you almost would kind of get uncomfortable there and just do it just to do it?
I think it depends on how high they're willing to go. If it goes, into the 200s and like we're starting to get into like, over 250. I'm like, I think I could it'll be tough, but I just don't think that realistically the Mets are not going to pay him that money. They're going to pay him, 150, 175 maybe the max for a shorter term deal. So I really think that's what he's going to get realistically with us. I don't know what other teams are willing to offer because it depends on their situation, but I think that is the best that we can offer him.
Yeah. And also I was just thinking about this too. Do you think if it comes down to where he feels like he's going to kind of have to do the shorter term with the opt-out after 1 year, do you think like because he's annoyed with how it's handled that he won't take that type of deal from the Mets?
I think it's tough. I think it depends on if he's really, really wants to come back.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be a part of it. I personally think that he's willing to do that because he's expressed multiple times that he wants to be a Met for, the majority of his career. And honestly, he's not, obviously he's not that old, but we would be, even with a shorter term deal, like 4 to 5 years, we're getting him for the rest of his prime. So I think like he won't be quote unquote like a Met for life, but I think like still a deal like this is still going to lock him up for the majority of his prime. So
yeah. So no, it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out. And you would think, if we don't get something, before the new year, that it'll be shortly thereafter on a lot of these, bigger name free agents. So time will tell. But let's go now to the world of the National Football League.
He wants Jefferson, climbs the ladder. Oh my goodness! Justin Jefferson, the catch of his life.
Burrow fires, intercepted.
Minka Fitzpatrick, an absolute ball hawk. Niners twist up front and get to Tagovailoa. Bosa again. Mahomes escaping on the move, stops, spins, flips it forward for the touchdown.
Stop it.
Aaron Jones. Oh, what a tackle. Quincy Williams with a pile driver.
All right. So we do have Thursday night football tonight. But before we get to that, I just wanted to mention, we talked about it in the open, the whole scenario with Jerry Jeudy and Woody Johnson, and supposedly because one of his kids, was mentioning about his Madden rating wasn't high enough. I have to say, all the stories from following sports all over the years, this is up there with kind of one of the most craziest, peculiar story I've ever heard, honestly.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem like real. Like, it doesn't seem
exactly,
like that actually
exactly.
happened. Like, it feels like there should be like a punchline at the end of the joke. Honestly, I don't know what to think about that.
And it's just like I still what really I struggle with here is just like I don't get the mindset of Woody Johnson, because obviously, 14-year playoff drought, most seasons just being a complete embarrassment. I just struggle with, like, isn't he like just sick of this, and like how he doesn't have like the inkling to kind of really step back and do things differently and bring in football people to make football decisions. Like, it's just crazy. I mean, the only thing I could just think of is that he just feels like he has to be in power no matter what. And he just enjoys it so much. And he's just so determined to prove everyone wrong. And it's just like the whole thing of like the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, is that really it? I mean, that's simplifying it.
I think you see it not just with him, but with other owners around the NFL. I think Jerry Jones is a great example as well of, he does it his way, and that's the way it's always going to be as long as he owns the team. And like you said, like it depends on the people you bring in and put around you to make the right decisions. But if you're power tripping and it's your way or the highway, nothing's ever going to change, especially in that situation. I mean, it pretty much in my lifetime, I know they made the back-to-back AFC championships, but I was like super young. Since then, they really haven't done much of anything in my lifetime. So, yeah.
Well, and then it's just funny, too. It's like you think about it, and it's like, you feel like Jerry, to an extent, is an embarrassment. But then it's like, he kind of makes the playoffs regularly. Yeah. Like, they have a chance. Like, and it's just like, so if Jerry's an embarrassment, then what is Woody, I mean, Jerry compared to Woody is in the Hall of Fame. I mean, it's just like really, really crazy. And you just question about, like, coaches coming in, who's signing up to fix this mess? Yeah. Who's going to want to work for him? I don't know. It just seems like a scenario that is just never going to end, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's kind of sad too, because especially looking at the last couple of years, I think Rodgers was a great addition, obviously at the time, but I think they were actually building a great team. Like, I really enjoyed what they were doing defensively last year, especially, and it just feels like it kind of all fell flat again. And I don't know if that's attributed to Rodgers and the whole mess that has kind of gone on with him, but I don't know. I really like this current unit of the Jets. I just wish that they could get a younger quarterback and kind of plug him in and at least try with this current unit. If that doesn't work, then you got to start over. But I do like the idea of like Rodgers kind of stepping back after this year and going and getting somebody else and just seeing at least how it would work,
Yeah, but it just feels like, knowing Woody, it just seems like he's gonna keep him, and then it's like, if he does keep him, is he gonna take like somebody to try to like help them with that draft pick that ultimately should be in the top 10. I mean, I'm sure they'll try to do their thing where they win these meaningless games and it's like 15th by the time it's all said and done. And it's kind of ironic they're playing the Rams because that was what set them up with Zach Wilson, because they beat the Rams years ago and missed out on Trevor Lawrence. But I just think if they're really going to go back with Rodgers and they're set on not taking a quarterback with that pick, then I mean, they have to move back, because I think it's just a waste to with a pick that high. Like I said, that should be in the top 10, not to take a QB. But I would like to just do it now. And I know every year everyone bucks out, well, like, who's the franchise quarterback? Like, figure it out. Figure out who you like the best and commit to them, have the right coaching around them. And I just feel like, too, it makes it so messy, like bringing Rodgers back and drafting a young quarterback and having a new coach. So, like, what the offensive system is, it just makes it so chaotic.
Yeah, and I guess I understand the point of, like, well, you know, this QB class doesn't jump off the page for people, so it's like they might want to step back. But it's like, to me, you might as well take a chance on somebody,
right,
just given your situation. But I mean, I could see a lot of teams who definitely need quarterbacks, waiting another year, kind of tanking it out and waiting for this next class to roll, because there's really not a ton of guys that jump off the page. But I mean, for the Jets' sake, I think that they should at least entertain the idea of, you know, looking at this QB class. But it all depends on if Rodgers, you know, wants to play another year, and they're not going to go over his head, because saw that one in Green Bay and it didn't end well for anybody. So yeah.
But it's like, I just think, too, though, even if he does, I don't know. Like, what do you think, though? Let's say, like, they're deciding he has to come back. Then do you think, though, that they should still draft the quarterback, or you're saying that they can't because of him in the first round anyway?
I think they should still be able to draft a quarterback, just knowing the way that he is. I don't know how he would react to that. I think it would be incredibly selfish of him to not let them draft a quarterback, given the fact that he's 40 years old. So it's like, I mean, realistically, like, how much longer are you going to play? But yeah, I mean, I think it would be kind of a coin flip how he reacts to that, because I don't know how long he sees himself playing on this team, but it can't be much longer given his age and the way
it would have to
have
be
gone.
Just next year.
Yeah, like it would
which
be.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah, I know. Like that's kind of my point, is like, if it's just going to be one more year of this, then like, why even bother? Like, at least, even if you don't want to draft somebody in this class, just go at least find somebody else to play quarterback for you, and at least, you know, give yourself a little bit of a better chance. But that's just my opinion. I know he's had great games and he's shown flashes. Last week he played great. Him and Devontae were really on the same page, but it's just like, I don't know. I just think it's like, at this point in his career, he's not gonna win you a Super Bowl. Like, you have to be realistic about this. It's just, he's not the same player that he once was. He's extremely limited in what he can do. So, and it sucks, because I was really rooting for the Jets, and it was cool to kind of see things start to turn around for them. But you have to be realistic at the end of the day about the situation. So
yeah, absolutely. So, again, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Now on to the start of week 16 tonight. Kirk Herbstreit and Al Michaels on the call here in Inglewood. The Chargers hosting the Broncos. And this has always been, good rivalry, going back to into the day. And really, this is an important matchup too, for the AFC playoff picture, because the Broncos, are 9-5. The Chargers are 8-6. Chargers also losers of 2 straight games and dealing with some injuries. J.K. Dobbins has been out, so they've had to go to Gus Edwards at running back. So they actually occupy the 7th seed right now. Seems like their spot is pretty secure because you have 3 teams at 6 and 8. So, when you look at that, it's the Chargers appear to have the tiebreaker, I think. So with that being said, it would be like the Chargers would have to lose out. Those teams would have to win out, which probably isn't going to happen. Yeah. But I'm sure they would like to maybe move up to the 6th seed and rather play the Bills in Buffalo, play the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Not that that's easy, but it's, the Bills, on the road, that seems pretty tough. So, when I look at this game, and the Broncos are definitely a good team, I do think, though, that, when you look at, last game against the Colts, that was basically going to be a loss if it wasn't for Jonathan Taylor throwing the ball out of bounds or whatever, out of the end zone for a touchback instead of a touchdown. Because, Bo Nix, 3 interceptions, you don't usually win games when you throw 3 picks. And I've been telling Tony really all season long, I mean, you have to laud what Peyton has done, with the rookie quarterback. Actually, for a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 8 years, the defense is great. They've been doing good things on offense, but I just don't think they're ready to, win playoff games, win big games just yet. But they have something to build with, of course. And I look at this game, and I'm sure Jim Harbaugh all week, especially coming off, 2 straight losses. Not only has he been studying the Chargers on tape, but studying the Broncos here and seeing, what Indy did to force those interceptions. But I just look at this game, and the Chargers are a 3-point favorite, and they're expecting this to be lower scoring, 41.5. But I just expect them to win this game because I think, Harbaugh is really good at making adjustments. And I think this Denver team can be beaten. I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are going into this.
I think it's going to be close, definitely. I think these two teams are kind of in the same spot, and they're kind of trading places right now, basically, with this game. But yeah, I think the Chargers will definitely bounce back and get the win here. They're definitely due. So, yeah, and obviously, like you said, I think Peyton deserves a lot of credit. Bo Nix deserves a lot of credit. Kind of turning that team around as fast as they have, because it was kind of left for dead after Russ left. So I think that that's been super impressive, and I think that they're obviously both teams are going to make the playoffs just because what's underneath them is those teams are not going to make the playoffs. They're pretty much done. But yeah, I think the Chargers will probably bounce back tonight, and Justin Herbert will have a great game, especially since they're at home. They play well at home, so yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, it's not only they've lost their last 2, but they've actually lost 3 out of 4. And the victory in there was against Atlanta. And you look at Denver, this 4-game win streak has been against Indy, Cleveland, the Raiders, and the Falcons. And then the game before that, they did just barely lose to the Chiefs, which was actually on a blocked kick. But yeah, I think this is a step up in competition for them. But I think, like you said, I think it will be a close game. So I'm excited to watch it. So let's do a Thursday night football frenzy. All right. So Inglewood, California, Chargers, Broncos. You mentioned this historic divisional matchup here, going back to the Ed Hockley days, I guess. He was a former referee. His son, Sean, eventually became a referee himself. He's now retired. But there was some call he made that resulted in, I think it was the Chargers not making the playoffs a long time ago. But ever since then, they have called it, like the Ed Hockley Bowl. And the games are always close. They're entertaining, like divisional games usually are. But going off of what I was speaking to, Denver's had a great year for sure. But I know the talent on this Chargers team, and I know they've dealt with injuries. But I think Jim Harbaugh, one of the best coaches in the league in terms of bouncing back. And I think that's what he does here. I think they established the run with Gus Edwards early. And also played tight coverage on these Denver receivers. Also getting Nix's face. Forcing some errant throws. So I think this is a lower scoring game. I think, at halftime, we're probably looking at, maybe Chargers up 10-7. And I think second half, they're able to get some points on the board and ultimately end up winning this game. I'm going to say 27-10. So it's going to be the Chargers and the under. And just like that, that is your Thursday night football frenzy. So looking forward to watching that. And again, 8:15 on Prime Video. So Crazy that we're already at week 16, and it's going to be a great week. We got the Saturday games as well. Great matchups. Houston versus Kansas City. I guess Mahomes apparently is going to go with that high ankle sprain, which is interesting because Kansas City pretty much has everything wrapped up here, barring losing the last 3 games. And then one of the best modern day rivalries in football with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. So going to be interesting to see what happens. And obviously we'll talk about that tomorrow. And before we move along here, a couple comments, I believe, starting with Michael.
Yes. Let me get there. We've got Michael coming in saying, GOAT's best sports show out there. Shout out to everyone tuning in. Says, Woody needs to go. Mary Materiello says, hi, fellas. Where's my Anthony?
He shaved. Editing day, Mary. Editing day.
Ace Who says, I like that.
Allen.
Josh B says, no Zach predictions. I said before briefly, I like the Chargers. I think they're gonna bounce back, and they're definitely due. I think Bo Nix is gonna have a tough day with the defense, maybe throw a couple interceptions. So I like the Chargers for sure.
Derwin James always lurking.
Yeah.
I'm excited to watch this, and just like we were giving Sean Payton credit, I know losing the last 2 games, there's a recency bias here, but Jim Harbaugh, excuse me, has done a great job in turning this team around because they were a mess with Brandon Staley last year, and they lost a lot of guys, like Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Austin Eckler, and they really haven't missed a beat. And I think he's the perfect coach for Justin Herbert to accelerate him to take the next step in his career. Also, interested to see too. I'm sure later on, Allen, Josh B will have some type of prop bet for this game. And I mentioned this. I don't know if they were listening when I mentioned this the other day, but I always say I don't like those, but I did do the Bijan Robinson over rushing yards for the Monday Night Football game, and it was like 80, and he ended up having like 120, so it wasn't even close. So that was a good one to win. But it's interesting because with this one, and I don't like doing like some type of like under passing yards or total interceptions, but this game is like weird where, especially if J.K. Dobbins was playing, maybe I would do that. But I feel like there isn't anybody where I feel comfortable doing a prop bet for offensively on either of these teams.
Yeah, because I don't know. I just get the sense it's going to be a low-scoring game,
right,
too. So it's like it's really hard, and I really hate rooting for unders. It pisses me off.
Yeah.
At least with overs, it's like, I don't know. It just feels like it makes sense. You're rooting for the guy to do well. I hate when unders start to creep up on you, especially in a parlay. I can't stand it. So I kind of stay away from unders usually anyways. So, yeah, I don't know. I just find it hard to do that. But yeah.
And no, I just hate totals in general because it's just like, I don't know. And I know any team could win any game. I understand that. But at the same time, it's just like, I feel like with the scoring sometimes, like you could go into a game, there's going to be so many points in this game, and there's just not, like, whether random weather comes in, a kicker gets injured. I don't know. I just don't like that. I think more times than being accurate on a total, the better team will win the football game, and that's why I feel more comfortable doing it that way. So be interesting to see. He's saying Bo Nix rushing yards. Could you guys elaborate on this? Because Josh B is saying tell him, Ace, LOL. What's the number on that?
Yeah.
What's the thought? So let us know about that. Kind of interesting. But while we're waiting on that, let's go to the world of the National Hockey League.
Here he comes. McDavid shoots. Top shelf. He scores. Captain with the overtime winner. That's the nail break. That's a world-class hit right here. Tomsky stepping. Rink wide. Made the full split save.
Are you kidding me?
Turn. Side of the net. Between the legs, and they score. Filthy. David Pastrnak. The silver trophy to the Golden Knights.
All right. So, Rangers were not in action last night, but they did finally make another trade here, obviously trading Trouba a couple weeks ago. But they trade former number 2 overall pick Capo Caco to the Seattle Kraken for Will Borgen, a defenseman, a third-round pick in the 2025 NHL draft, and a sixth-round pick in the 2025 NHL draft. So it's just one of those things where it almost reminds me of like the Yankees back in the day. Not that it was that long ago, but with like Miguel Andujar or Devi Garcia. I mean, this guy was a number 2 overall pick, and you're trading him for a defenseman that, let's be honest, I mean, not many people have heard of. And then you're getting a third and a 6th-round pick. So I guess it's better than nothing. But I just hate the fact of just getting so little of a return for a guy that you expected to turn around your franchise. And I think it really speaks volumes as to why the GM needs to go, because, I mean, they selected him number 2 overall. I mean, you make that call, and then, I mean, it's just a complete disaster, and then you trade him for scraps. Like, that doesn't show anything to have confidence in them.
Yeah, I think it's tough because, like, that's a guy that you wanted to invest in for the future of the team, and now you're kind of just dumping him for, like you said, a defenseman that's not really well known. I don't know. And I'm not, I don't watch the Rangers every night, but, I mean, just kind of from an outsider perspective, I mean, that's still just not really a great call. So, yeah.
Yeah, it just feels like you're losing. But again, I mean, he hadn't been producing either. So hopefully maybe you have a revelation and you actually do something productive with these draft picks. And this guy, helps turn around the defense. But I still think, they need help on the offense because you got, guys like Mika Zibanejad just asleep at the wheel pretty much every game. So a lot of work to be done, and like I said, they'll be back in action tomorrow, against the Stars. So some games tonight. We did have 5 last night, so just kind of running down those scores last night. We saw the Red Wings 6-4 in Detroit over the Flyers. Patrick Kane, actually, a goal and an assist there for Detroit. So 2 teams, kind of similar scenarios, hovering around 500. The Red Wings now 13-14-4. Flyers 14-14-4. So really a crossroads for them. They kind of were that surprise team last year for the first half, really tapered off second half, under Tortorella, and then ultimately don't make the playoffs. So be interesting to see how they navigate and if they try to boost that team to get them back in the playoffs. 2 teams that have been regularly in the playoffs the last few years, the Maple Leafs and the Stars. And I figured this was going to be the result. Tony was trying to talk me into the Stars here. But the Maple Leafs 5-3, Wool 36 of 39 in net. So, production there. And as always, the Maple Leafs with all their star power, one of the higher scoring teams in the league. And, they got Max Domi with his 2nd goal of the year, Nylander his 19th, and then also got Robertson his 4th, and McMahon his 7th. So Toronto now 20-10-2. But as we know with them, all the first round exits over the years, it's all about what they're going to do in the postseason. And I'm sure the Stars will find themselves back in the postseason as well. But they're looking to take that next step. And they had been strong at home going to this game, 13-4. Still, though, is a strong mark, so I'm sure they bounce back. The Panthers have bounced back after getting shut out in consecutive games. They've won their last 2. A 6-5 win over Edmonton, and then last night in Minnesota, 6-1. So really laying it on. Matthew Tkachuk had 2 goals and an assist, and I've been saying this, for a while. The way that team is built, the energy, the physicality, the scoring, that's what the Rangers need to model themselves after, because they're clearly, especially right now, a far way from that. Wild, have been one of the surprises of the league. Didn't have a strong game here, but are still 20-8 overall, which is very good. Utah with a slight upset here at home over the Canucks. So obviously once the Coyotes, first year in Utah, holding their own here, 15-11-5 now. With this 3-2 overtime victory, Clayton Keller with a goal and an assist. So they're looking to return to the playoffs in quite, for the first time in quite some time. Sergachev with the game winner there, his 8th of the year. And, we mentioned the goaltending situation yesterday. You have Vejmelka playing really good hockey again. A few years back when I first started getting into hockey, he was kind of one of me and Tony's favorite, like, underdog type of sleeper guys, because he had seen him. Oh, my bad. I just kicked out my...
Oh, you're good.
He had played some really good, a goaltender, and that was when the Coyotes were in the midst of being one of the worst teams in the league. So it's nice to see him getting some results after becoming a backup goalie last year, pretty much, with Connor Ingram playing well, but he has taken a backseat this year with some weaker play. So, you love to see that. And then an upset that I called, and I was riled because I thought they would win the night before, or I thought they would get beaten the night before, that is the Jets, but they lose to the Ducks 3-2. Former Ranger Frank Vetrano with 2 goals and assists, and you also had Troy Terry with the game-winning goal, last gasp, a game winner. So good to see that out of the Ducks. And, they've been competitive this year, a couple under 500 still, so ways to go. But good to see them, beat a team like Winnipeg, one of the best teams in the league, 23-10. But, they, complete the comeback. They were down 2-1 in the third. And for Toronto and Terry, 2 goals in the final 5 minutes to get the job there done for Anaheim. And then on to tonight. A little more action on the ice. No Rangers, but definitely, some good matchups here. You got Bruins, Oilers, Canucks, Golden Knights. And then you also have Kings, Flyers, Devils, Blue Jackets. So a few games to pick from. But let's see what happens in a Thursday night frozen frenzy. Probably should take a sip of water before this one after last time. So we have the first game, 7 o'clock, Amalie Arena, Tampa, Florida. The Lightning, minus 215 here, hosting the Blues. And I look at this game, Lightning 17-10. The Blues hanging in there at 15-15. The Lightning's home record up to 9-4-1. Total set at 5.5. And I think this is a game for a team like the Lightning, all the talent that they have. And recently they've done well, winners of 4 out of 5, as the Blues have dropped 2 out of 3. Their only win against the New York Rangers. So I think this is an easy win for them. I think Vasilevsky hones in. He's been getting better as the year goes on. Plenty of offense. I would say Kucherov, Point, and Gensel all finding the back of the net. And I'm going to say 5-2 Lightning over the Blues. So that would be the Lightning and the over. Next game up on the schedule here, 7 o'clock, Nationwide Arena, Columbus, Ohio. The Blue Jackets hosting the Devils. Devils playing well, 21-10. Blue Jackets 12-15 this year. Blue Jackets have also been on a big losing streak here, losing their last 5, as the Devils have won their last 3. But I'm going to say that the Blue Jackets snap that streak here against the Devils. Maybe one of those spots where the Devils don't take their opponents seriously. And Merce Lincoln's always a Tony favorite. I'm going to say he stops 28 of 30 in net. Columbus, Marchenko, the game winner in overtime. Columbus and the under. Next game up on the schedule here. 7:30 now. We're going to be in Philadelphia. Flyers hosting the Kings. You mentioned the Flyers losing that game last night on a back-to-back against a veteran team like Los Angeles, 18-9, 8-7-3 away from Crypto.com. But I think this is a solid win for the Kings. I think it's just going to be too much to handle against a younger Flyers team. This total also is at 5.5. But I say the Kings are going to win this game 3-1. And how about this? all 3 goals. A Tony favorite, the hat trick, but also Andre Kopitar. So we're going to go Kings in the under in that one. The Predators hosting the Penguins. The Predators coming off that win against the Rangers. Still 19-7-6. The Penguins 14-14-5. It's interesting because obviously that was a big win for them just to win something. Penguins, though, have been playing better. So I have a feeling they're going to get the job done at Bridgestone Arena tonight. And as they usually do, I think they get, a goal from Crosby, a goal from Malkin, and they ultimately win this game. I'm going to say 4-1. So we're going to go Penguins and the under. Next game up, the Blackhawks 11-19-2 hosting the Kraken 15-16-2. Me and Tony were talking about it. We would imagine Connor Bedard growing frustrated with this team, and he really has not popped out on the page the way everyone expected, being that number 1 pick 2 years ago. But they did beat Washington last time out, one of the best teams in the league. Also beat the Islanders the game before that. So you kind of have this feeling maybe better times ahead, and maybe an emphatic game for Bedard. And I'm going to say that happens tonight at home. Chicago, the +110. I'm going to say the Blackhawks with the total at 5.5 are going to win this game 4-1. So we're going to go Blackhawks in the under. Next game up, we have a matchup here between the Senators and the Flames. 9 o'clock, Scotiabank Saddledome, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. The Flames 15-11-6. The Senators 16-13-2. When I look at this game, I think Ullmark is the difference. I'm going to say a shutout. I know Alan loves those. So I'm going to say a 2-0 road shutout for the Senators. Senators and the under. Next game up, 9 o'clock, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, Rogers Place. The Oilers hosting the Bruins. Bruins hanging in there. The interim head coach. But I think the Oilers are going to be proved to be too much for Boston to handle. -185 on the money line. I think this is an over game. I think they get goals from Draisaitl and McDavid. And I think they ultimately run away with this one. I'm going to say 6-2. So give me the Oilers in the over. Next game up, 10 o'clock in Vegas, T-Mobile Arena. The Golden Knights hosting the Canucks. The Canucks coming off that overtime loss last night. I think a tough back-to-back, especially in Vegas of all places. So I think the Knights get this done here. I think they win this one 4-1. So we're going to go Knights in the under. Last game of the night, the Sharks hosting the Avalanche. The Avalanche have been up and down this season. The 0-4 start, 18-15 right now. The Sharks 11-18. Younger team, of course. And I usually enjoy doing the upset spot. Celebrini, last year's #1 pick. But I'm going to go with the veteran Avalanche team. And this is interesting. This is a battle of the goalies in terms of, trading Blackwood for Georgiev. So it'd be interesting to see, after this trade not that long ago, how they fare. But I think the Avalanche end up overwhelming them offensively and pull away to win 4-2. McKinnon with 2 goals and an assist. So we're going to go Avalanche in the under. And just like that, that is your Thursday edition of the Frozen Frenzy. And going the distance on that one is always a challenge, but nevertheless, a lot of fun. So, should be an interesting night of hockey for sure. And then really, other than that, I just wanted to mention, the bowl games from last night and, the marquee matchup, for the night anyway, was the matchup between University of Cal Berkeley and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. This is a game that the Running Rebels led 14-13 at half, ultimately end up shutting out Cal in the second half for their 11th victory of the season, 24-13. I ended up buying them down to -2, so they easily cover that number with the 9-point win. And it's interesting. They did their damage on the ground here, only passing for 148 yards through the air. Did get 2 passing touchdowns out of a Haji Malik Williams, 5 of 18, though, for 96 yards, but the 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 27 on the ground. Cal, despite the loss, did run for 182 yards on the ground, but not enough here as the Rebels get the victory in Inglewood. So that one also at SoFi Stadium, obviously the site of tonight's Thursday night football game. We also had a matchup between Western Kentucky and James Madison. This is a game, actually, James Madison trailed 14-7 at the half, but outscore Western Kentucky 20-3 for their 9th victory of the season. And this is only their 3rd year in the FBS. So an impressive victory for them. And you look at the numbers in this one. Atkins, their quarterback, Billy Atkins, 181 yards and a touchdown. And they did an outstanding job on the ground. And how about this? They ran for 212 yards on the ground, 4.6 yards per carry, while Western Kentucky runs for 16 yards on 20 carries, so 0.8 yards per carry. You don't usually see that. So definitely a job well done by James Madison as they look to grow as a university, and they've had success on the hardwood as well. So you always love to see teams, coming up from the lower ranks and switching conferences and competing with the best and having success. And that's definitely, what they are doing. And we have one bowl game tonight. And as Tony would say, not the who's who in this one, but Sam Houston State, who did have a good year this year, 9-3. This is the R&L Carriers Bowl in New Orleans. Obviously, where the Saints play. Zach is familiar with that stadium.
Yes, I am.
So you got Sam Houston against Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is actually a 3.5-point favorite in this one. The total also set at 48.5. So expecting some scoring here. Sam Houston State has won 4 out of 5. Only loss was against Jack State, 21-11. And then Georgia Southern has won their last 2, also 3 out of 5 overall. And really offensively for both of these teams, nothing really pops out on the page. French, the Georgia State quarterback, 16 touchdowns, 7 picks. Watson for Sam Houston State, 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And White, the running back, 654, 12 scores. And then for Sam Houston, Ducker, 719 and 7 touchdowns. So this is a game. It's like, how the hell do you know what's really going to happen? Yeah. But I don't know. For something, I like the value. And again, maybe that's part of the Vegas trap. But I like the value. Sam Houston did have one more win this season, and has also played better of recent. So just for that reason alone, I'm gonna say they get the job done there. The plus 3.5. I'm sure that's to entice the bettors around the world. But nevertheless, I'm gonna say they get the job done. The total does seem a little high based on some of the games that Sam Houston State specifically has had, Georgia Southern has had some higher scoring games. So I'm gonna say go with the plus 3.5 on Sam Houston State, and I'm gonna also say the under. So we'll say Sam Houston State is gonna win this game 21-17. So that one 7:00 on ESPN2, and like I said, at the Caesars Superdome. Do you enjoy watching any of these bowl games, Zach, or is it more the higher end in the playoffs only for you?
Like last night was kind of like a dull night for sports in general. There really wasn't anything on, so I kind of popped into the UNLV game and I watched a little bit of it. I'll watch here and there, but yeah, mainly like my excitement is for these bigger playoff games this weekend. I'm very, very excited for that. So yeah. And you know what? I think just kind of curious because Tony hates talking about this stuff, so we could actually just talk about it now. The playoff games starting with in South Bend on Friday night. That's going to be a great game. Indiana and Notre Dame, and Notre Dame a 7-point favorites. Both teams come in at 11-1.
And, Rourke, the quarterback for Indiana's had a great year, 27 touchdowns, 4 picks. And of course, on the Notre Dame side, besides Riley Leonard, the transfer from Duke, a lot of hype on Love, the running back, closing in on a 1,000-yard season and has 15 touchdowns. So, of course, Vegas is saying, Notre Dame is 7 points better. Indiana, though, despite, the loss to Ohio State, really had, an outstanding season, best in school history.
Yeah.
When you look at this, obviously playing at Notre Dame Stadium, that's a tough task. Do you give them a chance, or do you expect them to win? What do you expect to see here?
I lean towards Notre Dame just because they kind of, if you look at Indiana, their wins aren't really necessarily against like huge opponents. They took care of business. Obviously, they're 11-1. I just think Notre Dame had a tougher schedule overall, so I lean towards them. But I actually have a friend who goes to Indiana, so I am rooting for Indiana.
Yeah,
because it's a big deal for him. He got to watch this season in full. He was at every game. He's like a huge fan. So I'm really happy for him that they got to give him like a really cool season in his senior year. So yeah.
Yeah, and seemingly out of nowhere. I'm sure no one was expecting that. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And you kind of have that muscle memory of Notre Dame, a big spot, falling short, but it's like a different type of opponent that hasn't been there ever. So that's why it's going to be interesting. So I've still been going back and forth on that one, and, I'll give a prediction tomorrow. And then also another one that kind of has me perplexed is the Penn State Nittany Lions hosting SMU. This is the first game on Saturday. When you think of James Franklin, quality opponents, they don't usually, get the job done. SMU just outside the top 10 here. 8.5 to me up front anyway seems kind of like a big spread for them. But what are your thoughts here? Can you think, Penn State can get it done, or you kind of think SMU might pull the upset?
I think Penn State gets it done just based off of the fact that they've been able to weather the Big Ten and still be a high-ranked team. I think SMU is great, but the ACC, there wasn't really much to, write home about there. So I think in terms of going through the gauntlet over the length of the season, I think Penn State is definitely more battle-tested for like a big game like this. So I lean towards them.
So that'll be a good one. Like I said, first game of the day at 12. At 4, you have the Texas Longhorns hosting Clemson, and Texas, minus 12, and Klubnik, the quarterback for Clemson, 40 total touchdowns, most in the FBS. And, we all know about Quinn Ewers, who seems to have disappointed this season based on the lofty expectations set upon him, with Archie Manning really riding the bench for most of the year, coming in on running plays. But Texas, battled through the SEC, ends up going 11-2, and obviously losing that heartbreaker to Georgia in the SEC title game. What are your thoughts about that matchup? Texas 12-point favorite.
I think it'll be much closer than they're making it out to be. Obviously, I really think it'll be close for Texas, and really with Ewers especially. I think it's safe to say if you watch the SEC championship, Ewers had a pretty off day. I know it kind of picked up at the end of the game, but I think Texas will get out of this one in a close game, but Ewers really needs to pick it up if they're gonna be a serious contender going down the line.
And I just don't understand why they didn't just, as the season progressed, because either Ewers is going to transfer or go to the NFL draft. Why not just make the switch? Because I feel like Arch has provided a spark and did fill in for him when he was injured. I'm just surprised that they've been so hesitant to do that.
Yeah, I guess it's just because like you were saying, all the expectations that are on Ewers. I think they're holding out hope that and once again, he's not a terrible player. I don't mean it like that, but he definitely did not have a great game against Georgia. Like I said, got interesting at the end there, but. I think Arch has done better in a lot of situations, and I think once Ewers is gone, they're going to be set with him. Honestly, I think Ewers is going to go to the draft, though. I just have this feeling that he's gonna be in the draft.
But is it just me though? And I know this stuff changes, and I'm sure it'll change so much by the time we get to April. But didn't he like go into the year potential like number 1 overall pick? And I would think now the forecast is more like middle to late first. Is that kind of what you think right now? Anyway, I mean, I know he's still got the playoffs if they can go on a run here.
Yeah, I guess the playoff would be telling to see like where he'll end up if they do go on a run. But I think he's probably middle of the pack now. I think there's other quarterbacks that people are way more interested in. Obviously, like Shedeur Sanders is a big one, but
Cam Ward.
I think those guys are going to get priority. But yeah, I mean, if they go on some crazy run and he lights it up throughout the tournament, then it's a different story, obviously. But right now, I would say middle of the pack.
And then the last game of the weekend for the college football playoff, number 8 Ohio State at the Horseshoe, hosting number 9 Tennessee. And of course, last time we saw Ohio State, the shocking loss to Michigan. Ryan Day now 1-4 as head coach against the Wolverines. And you look at the numbers here. Ohio State favored by 7.5. And this is obviously a good Tennessee team that is really led by their running back here, Sampson, almost 1,500 yards, 22 touchdowns. That's Dylan Sampson, the junior from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Do you give them a shot here, or are you expecting the Ohio State bounce back, given, it's been a little bit of a layoff here for the Buckeyes?
I think Ohio State will bounce back. I'm sure it'll be a close game, but I just see them taking care of business in the first round. I think, honestly, it's tough. Like, a home game should be a good thing, but, I mean, they got booed off their own field against Michigan, so they better come out hot, or their fans are going to turn on them super fast, I feel like, and it's going to be a different home environment than they expect it to be. So,
and I still just can't figure out like what it is, because Ryan Day, I mean, I guess like they haven't won the national championship, but like every other opponent like they play, like a lot of times like they win handily. Like I just wonder what it is with Michigan. And if it was something like this year, for instance, obviously, Ohio State's expecting to win that one hand over fist. But if it was like something that Jim Harbaugh like kind of figured out, going against them, and then, he passed that along to, their head coach now, Sheldon Moore, like kind of weird, like the season that Michigan had, especially, winning the national championship last year and then to only be 7-5, but to beat Ohio State on the road, like that was so confusing to me.
Yeah, I don't really understand it. And I think when people talk about Ryan Day, that's his biggest problem. He just did not figure them out. And especially this year, it shouldn't have even. I mean, obviously, it's going to be a close game. These teams are super familiar with each other. It's a massive rivalry, but still, Michigan did not have a good season. They regressed coming from last year, losing Harbaugh and the rest of their top talent. I mean, Ohio State should have, been all right in that game. So I don't know. It is confusing, and I think that's the case that people make for Ryan Day to get fired. That's what people talk about. So I don't know. It's really weird to me too.
I don't think though he should get fired though.
I don't really think so either. I think he doesn't. Obviously that's a problem. Losing to Michigan like this all the time, but. Overall, I think your goal is to be competitive, and especially with how big the playoff is now, I think they're always going to be in the mix. So, I mean, that's not to say that you should just kind of accept that and be complacent, but I don't think that they should fire him just yet. I think that he could coach there for a few more years and kind of see how it goes before you.
I wouldn't be surprised though, and again, I don't think this is gonna happen, but just hypothetically, on Saturday, if they got blown out, then I could see that happening. Yeah. But as long as they win that game and aren't embarrassed against Oregon in the Rose Bowl, I think he stays, just because other than of course missing the national championship in the Michigan scenario, I mean he's done a great job in terms of wins and losses. So that's just kind of my thought. also, just kind of looking at this too, what did you make of the way they did it with like the buys and winning your, winning your conference? Do you think that was the right way to go? Because obviously, I mean, if it was just seeded by like the strength of these teams, Boise State and Arizona State would be nowhere near the top 4 seeds, right? I mean,
yeah, I think Arizona State, it's tough, but like I understand that because it's like they were pretty much projected last in the Big 12, and you end up winning the conference. You're red hot right now, so I understand that. But Boise, it's like I get it. You guys are a good team, but like you're in the Mountain West. Like I mean, it's like I don't really see why that deserves a bye. You know what I mean?
Because that is the stipulation. Like it has to be a group of 5 team getting a bye. Is that how that works?
I believe so. Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I just think it's like you getting in. It's like the NCAA tournament. You know what I mean? You get the automatic bid, but it doesn't mean you're automatically a certain seed. Like I feel like it shouldn't be like that. You know?
Yeah. I think they should base it off of strength of schedule over everything, and the important wins that a team has had. And I think that's what the big argument was with Alabama and SMU, is who had more important wins, and that's why people really thought that Bama deserved it. But, that's a totally separate argument. But I think just in general, going off of strength of schedule is more important than anything because, like you win your conference championship, but I mean, it depends who you're playing in the conference championship and in your conference in general. Like, that's why I bring up Boise State, because it's like, like you guys are a great team, but like you're not, weathering the Big Ten or the SEC. It's a very different animal when you're in those divisions for sure.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it bodes well for them because even if you get Penn State, they have to come to your place. You get the blue turf in a semifinal. That's going to be fascinating, I think, or a quarterfinal. But yeah, that'll be a good one. So interesting to see. Always love this time of year for college football. But that's really all we have, for today. And of course, a big show coming up tomorrow, previewing, not only Week 16 this weekend in the NFL, but of course recapping last night's game and taking a look, at the weekend slate in hockey and in college basketball. So looking forward to that. But as always, would like to thank everybody for tuning in today and continuing to comment, like, and subscribe. All of the archives on the YouTube page, Tony, Michael, Renee, and Jay, and Costume the merch at downtimetv.com. We want everybody to enjoy the day, enjoy the games, and we will see you mañana.
Hey guys, Tony here from Downtime TV checking in. I want to thank all our fans out there who's been liking, subscribing, sharing our content. You guys are the best. You guys are our bloodline. You make us love what we do. Thanks again.